I feel like we've already been ranting and raving, but it's time now for our rants and raves of the week, starting with you, Dan.
Well, I have a rant for MSNBC. One of their hosts, Sam Seder, it turned out, had written a tweet like 8 years ago, a satirical tweet aimed at Roman Polanski, who has his own problems with sexual assault and underage girls. And if you took the tweet completely out of context, it looked like Sam Seder was saying we should overlook his proclivity for having sex with young girls, when actually he was saying the opposite of that, and everybody knew it. And MSNBC immediately fired Seder on the basis of some right-wing activists going after him. Fortunately, they came to their senses and reinstated Seder, so a full rant and a half rave.
That is
at
really
best.
unbelievable. All right, Adam.
I want to rave for a piece that Allison Benedict, the executive editor of Slate, wrote a couple days ago, which has elicited a lot of discussion. There's been some positive feedback and also some negative feedback, but she made the case in this column that while there are definitely cases of sexual harassment in the workplace in which the lines are clear and certain behavior simply should not be engaged in, that there are other cases where there is ambiguity that needs to be thought about critically and grappled with, and she made that argument through the lens of her own experience.
Which is she met her husband at the workplace.
She met her husband at the workplace, yes. And whether or not you agree with her conclusions, it was sort of, I think, a brave piece for her to write. And it's worth a read, even if you end up rejecting what she has to say.
Yeah, because a lot of people met their spouses at the workplace.
But I would suggest that would be consensual, which takes it all off the table then.
Have you read the piece yet?
But wait, there's a power issue there, because he controlled her destiny.
So, Callie, have you read it yet?
No.
Go read it. Go read it.
And then read the piece in the New Republic, arguing the other side.
Thank you. So I am following in this whole line of thought. There are a number of women who were some of the accusers of Mark Halperin, the NBC political analyst, and Charlie Rose, who was at PBS, and they reached out to each other and started talking on Facebook, started talking informally, and now they've become a formal group. These are all news people, news women, and they call their group Press Forward, and they've decided that they want to look a little bit more carefully at what has gone on in the newsrooms, other than, getting it out there and making people understand the depth of it, but also to come up with some policies, some potential solutions for how to look at this. But what's interesting to me is that all of them sort of reached out to each other and are having this cross-fertilized conversation, which I think is very interesting. Press forward.
All right, Josh.
We talked a lot about the ABC and CNN cases and the negative effects of handing incorrect journalism to Donald Trump. But my rant is still about Donald Trump and his habit of calling everything fake news. Because, of course, it's not primarily about times journalists got things wrong. It's primarily about information that he doesn't like. There was a really good story in Politico today by Jason Schwartz, former Boston Magazine writer, who outlined when it looked around the world and found 15 different dictators or totalitarians or authoritarian national leaders who have followed in saying, you know what, Trump is right. Fake news is what's happening, and using that as a hammer to try and discredit press freedom in their countries. Bashar al-Assad said that after there was a report that 13 million of his people had been killed in military prisons, he said, we're living in a fake news era. Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines, a state official in Myanmar saying there is no such thing as the Rohingya, the group that is currently under genocidal conditions. We have a lot of soft power in this country. What we say about the press matters globally, and to have a president saying undermining the press in this way has real-world impact.
That's right. All right, well, I have a rant finally tonight for Jeff Faker, who's the executive producer of 60 Minutes, who, of course, I know through my dad, who was on that show. But this is the 50th anniversary of the show. You might have seen it last week. They went back and looked at all the terrific contributors. But they also put a book out, coincidental with the 50th anniversary. And Baker did not like the direction the book was heading, by an author who has substantial credibility, Ron Zuglin. So Jeff took the book over himself and wrote it. So it's all positive and rosy. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot. He didn't like the direction, because this guy was really digging in, trying to find it, which would be, probably more readable. Yeah.
And specifically around issues around the treatment of women in 60 Minutes.
Meredith Vieira, among others. Yes, sir.